Do you ever get lonely?
Yeah, I think everyone gets lonely.
That's almost like a daily struggle.
I often feel very lonely in the city.
What does it feel like?
It feels like being lost, like in a maze.
With no hand reaching out to you, and you just don't really feel like climbing back out, or you just can't climb back out.
It feels like that feeling of like you're about to cry, but you just don't need to.
I live in a studio apartment, so oftentimes it's sort of trying to be comfortable with myself.
I think loneliness for me is not feeling understood, and I definitely don't feel understood if I can't understand myself.
There always feels like this greater looming thing in me that brings on sadness.
Loneliness, as defined by Oxford Languages, is a sadness because one has no friends or company. This differs from solitude, as being alone isn't necessarily a bad thing, while being isolated against your will or wishes is. The human experience has often included sorrow at a lack of connections to others. This stems not just from a lack of people to befriend, but also an inability to reconnect with others due to a lack of social skills, common interests, or because of anxiety and shyness. However, as of recently, loneliness has become far more common than it used to be, leading to some calling the current social plight a loneliness epidemic. At first glance, one might question why loneliness deserves to be bestowed the attention-grabbing epidemic. However, many studies have illustrated the negative impact that loneliness can have on overall health. Humans are social creatures, and this is reflected in how meaningful human connections is one of the ubiquitous elements of human flourishing, as identified by research conducted by the Harvard Human Flourishing Program, which includes financial stability, mental and physical health, happiness and life satisfaction, virtuous character, close social relationships, and a sense of meaning and purpose in life.
This week, a report came out from the Surgeon General that loneliness is an epidemic. Actually, they said that in the UK about 5 years ago. Why are we always behind? But it's a big problem affecting millions of children, adults, even older adults. And people who are lonely are more prone to Alzheimer's disease. They're more prone to depression. And researchers has estimated has the same negative health effects as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Humans are a relational species. We're not polar bears. We need to be together. And so if you want to be healthy, be connected, not through your smartphone, but through physical groups of people, whether it's education or something you're interested in or church. Be connected.
As reported by the CDC, social isolation and loneliness can increase a person's risk for heart disease and stroke, type 2 diabetes, depression and anxiety, suicidality and self-harm, dementia, and earlier death. The number of people who feel lonely has risen sharply since the 2020 pandemic, as nearly 1 in 4 adults across the world have reported feeling very or fairly lonely, a new Meta-Gallup survey has found. The new survey, taken across 142 countries, found 24% of people aged 15 and older self-reported feeling very or fairly lonely in response to the question, "How lonely do you feel?" The survey also found that the rates of loneliness were highest in young adults, with 27% of young adults ages 19 to 29 reporting feeling very or fairly lonely. The lowest rates were found in older adults. Only 17% of people aged 65 and older reported feeling lonely. Over half of adults aged 45 and older reported not feeling lonely at all, while the majority of those younger than 45 answered that they felt at least a little lonely, if not very or fairly lonely. However, much discussion of loneliness places the largest population of sufferers as being male, and furthermore, as being a more extreme form of loneliness and of greater concern than female loneliness.
A lot of men now are more lonely than ever before. Like, there is literally a loneliness epidemic, especially in young men. Now, this is for a few reasons. One, most guys don't have anyone to talk to about their problems. Most men genuinely recognize in society that when you express your problems as a man, nobody really takes you serious. They just say, oh, you should hold yourself accountable, figure that shit out. You express your emotions, you're counted as weak, or that something is wrong with you. Also, other men will look at that and see that as a point of weakness. They will use that against you if they see you doing that. So what do most men do? They bottle it up inside and usually express it in some form of work. Whether that's going to the gym, working more hours at work, things like that. But it eventually gets to the point where men can't take it anymore and they need to let it out. But they still can't. Again, if they don't have too many friends or even their parents don't really value what they think, they can't do anything. Or even if they're living alone, it's even worse. Most men just really need someone that will actually listen to them and not use it against them in the future. Like, look at this. These are all male suicides. Actually, you can see that middle-aged men have it the worst. So if you have a homie, check up on them, please.
For example, articles on this topic often point out that men have no friends. As Cami Ansley notes in The Male Loneliness Epidemic, that research conducted in 2021 found that 15% of men claim that they have no close friends, a staggering 12% increase since 1990. Others point out that men are having troubles dating or are not seeking relationships. As Ansley notes, a 2022 Pew Research Center survey found that 6 in 10 men under the age of 30 are single, nearly double the rate of women at the time. The Equimundo study found that roughly 1 in 5 men are either not looking for a relationship or are unable to find sexual partners.
What are we going to do about the men's loneliness epidemic? I know that's not a woman's problem, but it's affecting us. Let's look over some stats, shall we? According to the Daily Mail, over 60% of young men are single. 39% are reporting loneliness in some capacity. 15% say that they don't have friends. The result of all of this loneliness, I think, is a lot of frustration. Over the past couple of years, there have been several movements that have popped up for men that were specifically anti-feminist, anti-woman. The Red Pill movement, Andrew Tate, like all of that stuff is a direct manifestation of people being frustrated. People like Andrew Tate and Sneeko are so resentful of women that they actually converted to Islam. In our everyday lives, I think some of this resentment is being used to power some negative political consequences. It fuels anti-abortion sentiment. It fuels anti-women working sentiment. It fuels these stupid conversations about social roles. Like, I feel like we were so copacetic like 15 years ago. The reality of the situation is that women are becoming more educated. They're being able to compete or surpass men in earning, and men are having a hard time bringing emotional satisfaction to their relationships. I think they are ultimately to blame for the situation that they're in where they're not single. Let me show you what I mean.
We're asking guys questions about their girlfriends, so here we go. When is her birthday?
July the 21st.
What are the names of her siblings?
Andrew and dude, don't. Man, this is actually kind of embarrassing, huh?
What did you go to college?
SFU.
What color are her eyes?
Green.
What is her current job title at work?
That's a great question. She works from home.
Has she ever played a sport?
It doesn't appear so.
Oh my god, I'm so embarrassed. What do these people talk about all day? Like, what do they talk about all day? The guys clearly aren't listening. Men, you have to take some accountability for your loneliness. Like, this is the low quality you guys are putting into your friendships. Oh my god, I'm cringing so badly. In any case, this isn't a woman's problem to solve, but I just feel like if we don't do something, shit is about to get crazy. Resentment is a powerful, evil, political force. I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm just thinking out loud.
The suicide rate of men is commonly pointed out as being much higher than that of women, as the suicide rate among males was 4 times higher than among females. The result of these articles is a belief that men are uniquely suffering from loneliness, which ignores that women attempt suicide more often, but are less successful, and tries to make women guilty for denying sex or companionship. That 37% of women have been diagnosed with depression in their lifetimes, compared to 20% of men, and that women attempt suicide more often, though use less lethal methods, is often left unsaid. These suicide rates also don't separate murder-suicides from men who merely commit suicide. The portrayal of depression as a public health issue is not overstated, but often it is used as a way to guilt women for gains in the workplace and in education, as these are often cited as reasons why men no longer have a sense of belonging or purpose.
So apparently there's a male loneliness epidemic right now, and I don't want to diminish that. That sounds really tough, but what I don't understand is why some men tell me this as if, like, I'm supposed to do something about it. Like, don't look at me. The most I can personally do is recommend you guys listen to Mitski, like the rest of us. Other than that, I feel like this is between you dudes, you know? And not to point fingers, but maybe if you spent less time telling women there's a male loneliness epidemic in an accusatory tone, and more time asking your boys how their heart is doing, this could all be over.
The problem, though, is that it's only to men that we would say, fix it yourself. It's only to men that we would say, it's your fault. It's only to men that we would say, sounds like men need to do better. It's only to men that we would say, stop complaining about it to me because, again, it's your fault and you need to fix it. And it's only to men that we would say, oh, nobody's listening to you? Well, that's your fault too.
This in turn reflects the belief that women should serve as buffers for violent men and protect great society. Take, for example, the coverage of the April 2024 Sydney mall stabber, who was described by his father as being motivated because he wanted a girlfriend and he has no social skills and he was frustrated out of his brain. If a man is violent enough to kill women he doesn't even know, what violence would he excuse towards a woman he considered his? Loneliness is often considered a reason for men to commit violence, and if it is an inciting factor, then why aren't women committing violence in equal numbers? After all, women are equally as lonely, and in 79 out of the 142 countries, they had a greater self-reported rate of loneliness in women than men. The fact that women aren't committing acts of violence in equal numbers illustrates that sex plays a role in how loneliness is expressed. Not to mention, women are often pressured to alleviate loneliness through couplings with men, even if that means lowering standards to accept men that women know they won't be completely happy with.
Have you ever heard men lashing out at women saying you're going to die alone with cats? Statistics show that husbands have a much smaller chance of outliving their wives than the other way around, and single men have an even shorter lifespan than that of single women, or married men. So even if a woman chooses to marry a man out of fear of dying alone, he's still more likely to pass before her, thus leaving her alone. So either way, she's going to either die alone with cats, or die surrounded by family and friends who love her, which is what actually happens according to testimonies from people who work in nursing homes. They say men are less likely to get visits in nursing homes because they fail to develop deep connections with family and friends in their younger years. Women are also more likely to be able to move in with family in their old age, while men are more likely to be put in an assisted living facility. So don't worry when men say you're going to die alone with cats, because when that time comes, they've probably already been long gone. R.I.P. Dusty.
And of course, the question arises, why are men lonely? Some note the inability to have meaningful friendships as a large factor. Considering that loneliness is highest in young people, this suggests that a lack of social skills is at least somewhat linked to the rise of the internet. Making friends is often as simple as simply going to the same place on a regular basis or finding a group that shares a common interest. One of the easiest ways to meet people in a new city is through social media, where meetups and groups seeking new members are advertised, as are individuals seeking company. For example, Bumble BFF, the dating app's friendly spin-off, can also facilitate friendships. But many men approach it with homophobic biases since our culture tends to sexualize male vulnerability. Reddit threads are full of unsubstantiated claims that the app is overrun with undercover gays. Given these inhibitions, it's no surprise that just 1 in 5 men have received emotional support from a friend in the past week, compared with 41% of women. In other words, men are now so afraid of being labeled homosexual that they refuse to become intimate or to seek companionship with other men.
For the fellas, would you rather tell your feelings to a brick wall or to a woman?
These men absolutely cannot stop telling on themselves, and at this point I think it's kind of hilarious. Now I love this previous creator's response to this video because so true. But I'm going to say it out loud. The male loneliness epidemic that we're facing right now is almost entirely self-inflicted. Because yeah, just like this previous creator said, boys will do anything to avoid talking about their feelings. Especially women, who will give them the most honest feedback. They will throw away like 24-year lifelong friendships just to avoid talking about their feelings and self-isolate. And an interesting thing about this male loneliness epidemic is it specifically just talks about men and their friendships. Like, it's not even about dating and relationships. A lot of these surveys are surveying married men, and I see this all the time in my male friendships. And there are tons of people who have already done a deep dive into how they set up the patriarchy, right, for them to not feel masculine enough talking about their feelings. And of course, because of this, almost like half of men feel very unsatisfied with their friendships because they can't form close and fulfilling friendships. But most male friendships that I've lost in my time on this planet have been because they refuse to talk about their feelings and they'd rather just like block everyone and disappear from your life. I actually have 2 guy friends who have done that this week. They're saying they're going through a lot of mental health stuff right now, so they've just completely cut everyone off. Even though I'm like really concerned and beg them to talk to me about it, because that's concerning.
It's not as if this inability to make friends is innate. The idea of manliness being unemotional and stoic and vulnerable and separate is a patriarchal idea, as it accuses women of being innately vulnerable, weak, and emotional. Men's unwillingness to make friends is from a gendered socialization, and like the pain from a gun's recoil, is a result of the patriarchy, which creates unnecessary and harmful gender division and allows men to police other men to keep them in line. The internet, too, plays a large role, as nearly half of American men say their online lives are more rewarding than their offline lives. The virtual world, with pornography and ideological provocation, is facilitating men's withdrawal. 1 in 5 Gen Z men trust the misogynist social media celebrity Andrew Tate. Additionally, men are feeling upset that women are outperforming them in school and work, now that they are not restrained entirely to the domestic sphere or forced to rely on men for survival. That attempts at reaching equality between the sexes is viewed as unfairly skewed towards women is reflected in a myriad of studies. One of the most well-known is that women's contributions were viewed as equally balanced when women spoke 25% of the time. When women spoke as little as 30% of the time or more, they were perceived as dominating the conversation. Being a minority or otherwise othered often leads to an inability to connect with other people or to find a group with which to belong. Gabriel Garcia writes of gay loneliness. The Oxford English Dictionary defines loneliness as the quality of being unfrequented and remote, isolated. This definition is too basic for my standards because loneliness, at least as it stands in the gay community, can be found almost anywhere. At the gay bar, at the club, in the women's gender and sexuality studies classroom, or in a bed, shared. The cause of this distinct loneliness, however, is not a direct result of being attracted to people of the same gender, but the disparate nature that comes along with being a gay man. An otherness that is only perpetuated by existing and functioning within the predetermined hypermasculine spheres made for and by straight men. Gay people statistically are 2 to 10 times more likely to commit suicide than their non-LGBTQIAP+ counterparts. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, negative attitudes towards gay men from the notion of straightness as regular and right add to poor mental health and poor coping skills, such as substance abuse, risky sexual behaviors, and suicide attempts of gay men.
Whenever a woman comes out as queer or as a lesbian specifically, I kind of want to warn them it's not going to be all sunshines and rainbows and happiness. Because being a lesbian or being a queer woman who's specifically wanting to date only other queer people is a very lonely experience. Because I've experienced it myself. Oh, and by the way, I saw y'all's comments on my I don't understand how bi women are still ending up with men video. And I think I've seen the light now. And I think I am a lesbian because I did have some realizations. Like, for example, I think that if I was in a relationship with a man, I would regret it for the rest of my life that I didn't pursue a relationship with a woman or a lesbian. And I would also probably open up the relationship if I was with a man so that I could be with women, but that wouldn't be the case if I was with a woman. So the pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. And I think I have the answer now that I think I am probably a lesbian. But anyways, I have been dating for about 1 year and 3 months now, with some breaks because school gets very tough sometimes. And some months I am not on campus, like winter break and August I was not on campus. But now that I'm back on the apps because school year started, I'm slowly starting to realize how bad it is to date as a lesbian who's only dating women and non-binary people. That's it. No man whatsoever. It's actually just a desert out there. And especially since I'm only attracted to masculine women and masc lesbians, butch lesbians. And they're nowhere to be found. Like, they're either taken or, I don't know, in situationships or in hiding. I don't know. I keep seeing femme after femme after femme after femme on the dating apps. And I'm so tired. Like, am I going to be alone forever? Just because I'm a lesbian?
Lesbians are not any better off, as an independent study by Just Like Us, the charity for LGBT plus young people, has found that of all the identities under the LGBTQ plus umbrella, lesbians are the most likely to report feeling lonely. Almost 9 in 10, 87% of lesbians felt this way, and also reported feeling separated from the people they are closest to. 60% of those experienced this on a daily basis since the pandemic began. This was compared to 46% of gay boys, 54% of young bisexual people, and 52% of young transgender people who have felt lonely and separated on a daily basis. So, if loneliness is not singular to men, if everyone is suffering from an inability to connect, why is the discussion always so gendered? Loneliness is a human problem, a first world problem, a technology problem, not a man problem. And the solution to male loneliness is far simpler than it is for some minorities, like lesbians, who literally cannot have a space to ourselves to find one another. And just like anyone who is lonely, to fix the problem is simple. Make friends offline. Find a third place to spend time in to talk to other people in real life. Put effort into being sociable and polite, which means learning how to hold conversations, how to empathize and equally share time with other people, and perhaps, first and foremost, view others as unique and human and valuable, just as you view yourself. This, dear viewers, is where we part. There is plenty of discussion on loneliness. I think that this is just a general generational problem. Older people tend to have already made their friends. You kind of stick with them. There's different socialization rules for older people than young people. Like, my mother is the kind of person who can literally meet a stranger and get to talking, and then they're having coffee. And she's used to having full-on conversations at the grocery store and at the pharmacy, and she knows everyone's names. And I feel like a lot of younger people have this anxiety where it's too hard to ask for ketchup or correct their order. So they're definitely not talking to strangers, definitely not meeting new people organically like you would expect. Most people are now socializing a lot online, especially the ones who were in a pivotal time during the COVID pandemic when you were supposed to be out making friends and getting to explore your identity. They were online. And the rules for engagement online are very different than the rules for engagement in person. You're missing being able to read the expression and tone of a person. You're missing the actual in-person interactions that make up a social life. And while definitely having online friends isn't a bad thing, I've met plenty of online friends and I've visited many in person, I think that the fact that we've missed out on a third space, on a place to go besides school and work and home, is another huge factor. People don't go out and hang out and spend time in other places, so they don't meet people organically, which would be, if I see the bartender every Saturday for karaoke, he's going to know my drink and my name, and I'm going to know his. But if you're too afraid to go out and do that, then how are you going to solve loneliness at all? And I don't think this is a mistake of any kind. The fact that people are also just facing so much exhaustion from working, the burdens of having to spend money to go out and socialize, for example, all of these are huge issues, because if you want to just go out and meet someone and join a group because, I don't know, you want to join a hiking group or a walking group, a lot of these things cost money. I know here in Phnom Penh, there's a hiking group that goes out once a week. Oh, I love doing the hiking stuff, but it's like $35 each time, and I cannot afford that on a weekly basis. You want to join an art group? Well, they're art courses, they're classes, and you're going to have to pay money to do it. So it's really hard to meet people outside of the online sphere. And I'm just a little bit annoyed that it's presented as a uniquely male problem. And I think that's in large part tied to the fact that when you have these mass shootings and acts of violence, a lot of guys say it's because they were lonely or didn't have a girlfriend, and so it's easy to connect the violence to the loneliness instead of seeing loneliness as the problem that it is. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!